Start your week with a triple shot of good vibes. This is the Project Joy Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas. Thanks for joining me. And now it's time for this week's story of joy. Yesterday was a nice day of remembrance for me as I remembered about my grandfather, Anthony, and it would have been his birthday yesterday. He passed away actually back in 2010. And I've shared a little bit about that before in the process of sharing about my brother's passing, because he actually passed away not just a few days before my brother did in 2010. So I think often about the blessing of that, in that we were already up there for his funeral. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have gotten to see my brother before he passed away. So I often think about the gratitude that I have regarding that particular situation. But as far as my grandfather's concerned, I have so much gratitude for him. He was absolutely one of the consistent men in my life growing up. He helped to raise me. He was also my godfather in the church, and was really, really special to me. You guys have heard me talk on here about my grandmother often, but my grandfather was very special as well. And one of the things that sticks out to me that I wanted to share in today's story of joy is just that how different he and my grandmother were. And my grandmother was very earthy, very by the book, very, this is how things are done. There's a proper way to do everything. And my grandfather was, although he was very much for rules and doing things a certain way, he was a little more go with the flow, especially as far as playtime is concerned, about relaxation and all of that. And so my grandmother used to get more, I guess, upset about things in life than my grandfather did. And so she would nag at him sometimes about things. And the one thing I remember is he always used to want to smooth everything over. And I have these memories of my grandmother used to, just stand there at the kitchen sink and harshly wash her dishes as she was angry about something. And my grandfather used to come up right behind her and wrap his arms around her or put his hands on her shoulders. And he would say, Margie, and he would sing to her, and he would try to get her to laugh and loosen up. And that's something that I've really, a memory that I've taken into this life and, into my adult life, and try to do that as well. If I get angry, if I'm upset about something, to not let it hang on forever, to just try to move on and smooth it over, because life is short and we should enjoy each other. We'll be back in just a minute for more of the Project Joy podcast. What's up, everybody? It's Jessica here from the Project Joy Podcast, and I'm here today to tell you about something that has been completely life-changing for me. Are you tired of trying to get stuff done by yourself? Do you need accountability? Are you ready to finally, not just talk about it, but do it? Declutter your space physically, mentally, emotionally, to live the best possible life you are here to live. Then you, my friend, need the BYOC, or Bring Your Own Clutter membership. This membership is run by my friend Heather Clark, and it has been life-changing for me. You need this. You need this in 2020. Join us. Go to declutterforchange.com. And now back to the podcast. Welcome back to the Project Joy Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and welcome back to the show. I'm so excited to be here with you today to talk about joy in following. So in the personal and spiritual development world, we hear so often about being the leader. Being in leadership, to not follow everybody, to just to be yourself, and others will follow you, and that sort of thing. But the truth is, I mean, if you think about even saying that, there are leaders and there are followers, so I wanted to talk, because I've already talked about joy and leadership on the show. I thought, well, we need to talk about joy in following, because even though, of course, there's joy in being a leader, of course, there's joy in standing out in the crowd and having other people emulate what you do, or be your quote unquote follower, there is joy in following as well. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. So the homeschooling mom in me is coming out right now, and we're starting out by looking at the textbook definition of the word follow. So dictionary.com says, first of all, to follow is to go or come after a person or thing proceeding ahead, or move or travel behind. Now, the second part of it says come after in time or order. To follow means to come after in time or order. So if you think about, just even start thinking about that particular part of the definition, doesn't everything have a time or order? If you think about a lot of the things, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are on social media, or you're leading your business in some kind of way, maybe you're even a show host, you're not the first one on the planet. We know that humanity's been around a long time, right? You're not the first person on the planet to do what you do, or to have certain thoughts, or to go a certain place. Most likely, even if you consider yourself a leader, you are following someone else's footsteps. Now, I think what takes you into leadership is doing something unique with that, with having, or what I guess timely thoughts. I don't want to say original thoughts, because I think a lot of times what some people think are original thoughts are things that have actually been thought before. It's just the first time they may have been advertised, or the first time somebody might have heard it. But just thinking about that, though, even if you're a leader in your field, you're a leader in the field right now. You're coming after other things, though. So technically, you may be a leader, but you're also a follower, right? So just thinking about that part of the definition. Now, when it talks about to move or travel behind, I think that one of the best places that we can find joy in being a follower is that it opens our mind to new ideas, and it also opens our mind and our thought process and all of that to create things that are new and different, to step into a space of leadership. A lot of times, for those of us that are entrepreneurs, we may be starting out and not really sure where to start. Maybe we have some good ideas, but we're not really sure on how to do certain things in our business. And in that case, it can be super joyful to follow people for a little while, to say, to learn, to expand our minds and say, how can we profitably, joyfully run our business, right? So to be the follower can be an extremely joyful experience, because it can help us expand our minds to learn and grow and all of that. And I think that one of the biggest keys of enjoying being a follower is knowing when it's time to have your own thoughts and to step out of it and to emerge as a leader. But I think in some cases, it's good to be a follower. And this is one of the reasons why I don't feel like we have to be an expert at absolutely every single thing that's available to be an expert in on the planet, right? We don't have the time or the mental capacity or even the joy to we don't need to be the expert and the leader in every single field. In fact, that doesn't serve us as humans. It doesn't serve us as individuals, because it doesn't allow us to really specialize in things. Maybe you've heard the phrase "jack of all, master of none." Think about it. If you spread yourself so thin, trying to be the leader in everything, you're not going to ever truly master something. And it doesn't do a service to other people to try to be the leader in everything, because just think about that. If you were the leader in absolutely everything, then what would be the need for anyone else? What would be the need to support your friends in their work, to support other businesses, to support other leaders in what they do? So I think there's often such a negative vibe behind the word follower, because we think that means that we're not the expert, we're not the leader, that's somehow bad, that we don't have our own thoughts. I think you can follow someone, or you can follow a thought process and still have your own unique thought and way of doing everything. So, it's joyful to follow, because you can, especially where, being an entrepreneur is concerned, you can, like I said, first and foremost, open your mind to new things, but you can also support other leaders in their expertise, and they can, and vice versa. They can do that with you as well. They can say, hey, like, I'm a leader in, helping you to take control of your finances, but my friend is a leader in helping you to help you take control of your home and keep it organized, or a nice home or whatever. And you can support each other in your leadership efforts. And isn't that something that we need more of these days, is to be in support of each other? So I think some of the biggest messages that I want to share in joy and following is that we don't have to think of being a follower or following as a bad thing. We don't have to have such a negative vibe behind that word. It means that to follow for a little while means that we're educating ourselves. It means that we're opening our minds to new things. And my only suggestion would be to remember to have your own thoughts, to not blindly follow. There's a difference between following something and keeping up with it, and to blindly follow and not have your own thoughts. So I think there's definitely joy to be found in being a follower or following. And I think eventually following leads to bigger thought ideas, to more original thoughts, and allows us to emerge as a leader later on. We'll be back in just a minute for more of the Project Joy podcast. If you love these stories of joy, you will love the incredible stories of life-changing moments from inspiring guests on my program, The Breakthrough Show. Save the date, because season 4 premieres on Friday, April 3rd, 2020. So be sure you're following us at facebook.com/breakthrough show, or click the link in the show notes. And now back to the podcast. Up next week on the Project Joy podcast. Next week, we are going to be jumping into another Joy in Stories episode, where I welcome a friend of mine from my life to share about what brings them joy in their lives. This has quickly become one of my favorite parts of the Project Joy podcast, because although I love telling stories of joy and sharing joyful thoughts and lessons from my own life, I love to hear from other people and learn what brings them joy in their lives. I think it's a great way to experience joy through someone else's eyes, and also helps us to open up our eyes to maybe areas in our lives where we haven't noticed the joy before. So we've heard from Erin Fisher, we've heard from Shoshana Chaim, we've heard from Heather Clark, and next week we're going to be hearing from my friend Joanne Lucier. So I'm really excited to be inviting her on from the Willow Connection to share about several things that we talked about that are bringing her joy in her life. So be sure you join us for that. Until next week, guys, thanks so much for joining me today. Be sure to rate, subscribe, comment, and share where available. And until next week, make joy a priority in your life today and every day. We'll see you next time. You've been listening to the Project Joy podcast with your host, Jessica Dugas. We'll see you again next Monday and every Monday for another episode to start your week off right.